Remember, chat, I'm considered right-wing, and I'm the reason for the collapse in the video game industry. It's not like video games used to be really, really fun. 3, 2, 1, boom.
Hey, what's up, guys? We're up here. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you enjoy the hat. I'm feeling very festive today. And to celebrate this beautiful day, we're going to do what we do best, and that is dunk on journalists. The article we're looking at today might be the worst one of 2024, and that is really saying something. This is a hit piece by The Wired that is essentially blaming gamers for the failures of the industry in the year 2024.
Isn't The Wired for, like, TV? Why are they talking about video games of all things?
So here's the headline. 2024 was the year the bottom fell out of the games industry. From layoffs to the return of Gamergate, video games and the people who make them and play them had a rough year. Now, yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense, right? When there's games out there costing studios hundreds of millions of dollars, there's going to be layoffs as a result. And on top of that, it seems very clear from a lot of different perspectives that a lot of studios and the people who work at them were more interested in political activism than they were creating good.
Can I just say that when a restaurant serves bad food and it doesn't have good customers, or maybe like they don't clean the kitchen, people notice and they stop going, and eventually people stop going to your restaurant and they don't want to eat at your restaurant. And they close down. But for some reason, we don't take that same standard to video games that costs probably more than double a meal, actually. Yeah. You don't need to be a chef to know that the food tastes bad. Yeah, that's exactly right, chat.
And enjoyable games. And guess what? There's consequences as a result of that. Gamers spoke with their wallets, and that's why we're seeing a lot of studios really struggling. Now let's get into the article here. So it's
And I have to preface this. And in 2020, 4 years ago, they overcorrected for the demand, and now they're also paying the price. I think it's a double whammy, in my opinion. It's just getting really, really bad because of all the people saying, "Oh, nobody buys our video games because they're white males." Blah, 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 blah.
It says, for the people who make video games, 2024 was a year of holding on for dear life. At the annual Game Developers Conference in March, Survive Till 25 was this year's incantation.
Survive Till 25? Are you serious? Is that what they're saying to themselves? How about you make good video games and you wouldn't have to say it?
Summoned to keep morale on pace. That is a very bad look. When at the Game Developers Conference, you have a incantation, as they say, that is survive till 25. That's in March, by the way. So for the entirety of 2024, they basically booked it, right? They're just saying, we got to survive till next year. Well, when you're trying to create art under the mindset of just survive, keep collecting a paycheck and just survive till next year, is it really a wonder that there were so many bad games this year? And also, did surviving till 25 include a bunch of people in the industry constantly attacking and disparaging gamers? I guess so. But to continue on, others resorted to full-on screams as layoffs in the industry charted record highs and developers found themselves under attack for conspiratorial nonsense. So in
Corpo's laying you off because the overinflation of jobs from 2020 and 2021 is not helping your case. I do think there's a large portion of the layoffs are because of the overcorrection or the overstimulation of the games industry between 2020 and 2022. And I think now we're coming around and people are getting laid off a lot in the last year or so. I've seen it. I've read enough articles to know that a lot of people got laid off during that time. But I do think there is just some people are fighting it and saying it's because of the chuds. It's not. People aren't playing as many video games to top it off. There aren't as many good video games.
In case you forgot what they mean by this whole full-on screams, this was a bunch of game devs at that conference we just mentioned having a scream. screaming out
Please
their
play
inner
it. Please
pain and
play it.
anxieties about the current state of the gaming industry and all of the hardships they face, largely because of gamers. That's really the way they think. So let's listen to this again.
Oh, thank God.
Full-grown adults, ladies and gentlemen. Open up the asylums. Yeah, you get the point.
I remember talking about this. I think I made a video about it. You can go find it, probably. Yeah, people screaming. This is not fake, by the way. Chat, this is not fake. This is real. People screaming at their own HQ, yelling at them for firing them because they got laid off or something, if I remember correctly.
I won't subject you to any more of that. So they literally let out a giant scream to express their anger against Gamergate and also all the layoffs in the industry currently. It was a very embarrassing moment. Well, let's continue on with the article.
It was a conference. Well, I guess it's still the same thing almost. They're just yelling and being upset.
Here. So in 2023, more than 10,000 developers lost their jobs. 1/3 of game makers surveyed at the beginning of this year reported that they'd been affected by layoffs in some way. While there were wins for labor organizers as big studios like Activision Blizzard and collective action around fighting for protection from encroachment of AI on employment, the industry's collective...
Oh, they don't care. They will not care about AI encroachment. Blizzard, so for those that don't know, you know how Blizzard has its own patented style that they teach their, what is it called? Like their artists how to draw in particular ways? They already patented that to make AI out of it so they don't have to pay artists. Even from people that were like past, past artists that quit before AI was introduced. They will use that art to train a model.
Brain drain continued in 2024 as workers lost jobs en masse. 6 months in, this year's layoff tally has already surpassed that of 2023. According to Matthew Ball, an advisor and producer in the video game and TV space, 2024's job loss count will wind up being about 40% higher than the previous years. Well, that's not too surprising when you think about it, right? Because there have been so many massive failures. We've seen some record failures this year. You know, normally you see a couple AAA flops. We've seen a dozen or so major AAA flops this year that cost studios hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course, there's going to be consequences. People are going to be laid off.
Or in some cases, $250 million. Concord!
Investors, studios, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars has a consequence.
Concord,
they have to do something to trim the fat and try to get their money back, which is, you know, the first step is laying people off, of course. But to continue on, the explanation is complex and wide-ranging for the same reason the layoffs are so deep and continuous and sit alongside many studio closures and even more canceled games, Balls.
There's always going to be canceled games. You cannot be a game dev and not expect for games to get canceled or thrown away. Even if it's a good game, sometimes your idea might just be not that great. It's not worth it.
So yeah, when they say this after seeing this article, they really just mean it's the gamers' fault. Right?
Really
the gamers didn't support us. The gamers are a bunch of bigoted, anti-woke chuds, and they did this to us. So let's continue on. As the industry faltered, games suffered. High-profile releases like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League were commercial failures. Well, at least they admit it. While there are many reasons for this, online right-wing groups reduced it to a single mantra: go woke, go broke, buy their life.
I think that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League had a lot of issues with the quote DEI agenda that people found what they saw in the video game with Mrs. Freeze and Mr. Freeze. But overall, I just think it's a dog shit overpriced game. I don't think it's that deep. I don't think the entire game is like gay or whatever, and like people are saying, "Oh, Alana, you're such a chud. You don't support the gays." I do, but okay, whatever you want to say, whatever to make you feel better at night. But I think the game itself just doesn't run great, and it's a mid game. Hero gamer shooters have proven to be successful with Marvel rivals. Tencent proved that.
logic, if a game does poorly and has even a whiff of diversity, be it regarding gender, sexuality, or race, that disappointing performance is the fault of DEI. Yeah, a lot of projection and false claims right there. But beginning with the commercial failure of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, here's the article they linked. It's from Bloomberg, and apparently this is just another reason to not check out games journalists, because apparently you have to pay just to view this article, where the headline pretty much explains everything. They lost $200 million on this game. That's it. And I have to pay you to read a Jason Schreier article? No thanks, dude. You guys are really getting very cocky with this stuff. Like, the games journalism scene is dying, and you're trying to paywall articles like this that literally can be explained by the headline. But anyways, they go on right here, like they said, with this whole go woke, go broke, and they say, if a game has any diversity, it's going to fail. No, there's plenty of games that do really well. There's a lot of woke aspects of Baldur's Gate 3. And that game is a massive success.
Because the game is good. There were minorities of people that were crying and saying it was a woke game and that it had trans characters in it and whatever. But ultimately, it didn't matter. That's what I'm saying. Again, you can make a quote-unquote game be quote-unquote woke, but if it does well, then you don't have to worry about the minority, about them crying about how it's woke. Because it's an enjoyable piece of art.
Respected by many, many gamers, and it's still outperforming a lot of games in 2024, despite being released nearly a year and a half ago. So that is just a false claim. But they continue on, saying, although there have been incredible games released this year, Balatro, Final Fantasy VIII Rebirth, Metaphor...
sorry to interject again. And the thought of saying that Baldur's Gate 3 owned the chuds isn't even a factor. I also hate it when people say, oh, well, Baldur's Gate 3 is a woke game. What about it, man? You're such a chud if you support the game and say, oh, well, if you like the diversity in Baldur's Gate, then you're supporting it. It's like, well, actually, because you don't have to engage with it if you don't want to. That's why people aren't upset about it. If you want to make a gay character, you can. If you want to make a trans character, you can.
Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong, they just couldn't distract from the troubles faced by the people making them.
It makes sense.
They couldn't make up for the fact that the meta-narrative of video games in 2024 was bleak. You know, for a lot of people, I think there's a lot of games that people did enjoy. I mean, there was a lot of great games, including games like Stellar Blade, that they failed to mention, probably for personal reasons.
Objectifying women and their beautiful bodies.
But there was a lot of good games out there this year. It wasn't all just doom and gloom. And if anything, we saw a lot of small indie games, double-A studios, and alike do really well, basically filling in the gaps that AAA releases were allowing to be filled up because they were just very disappointing. But Ball says that the blame for all of this can't be pinned to a single thing, like capitalism, mismanagement, COVID-19, it's 2024, dude, or even...
I understand what they're saying. Capitalism is what happens now with video games in only making video games for money and profit. Mismanagement is also, yes, I agree with that, because they overhired people during COVID. COVID-19 is what he's saying is that it's happening now where it's collapsing. I think Rev may be misunderstanding this or not, or he disagrees, but I think that's what they're saying, and I agree with it. Because they overhired because 2020 to 2021, everyone was at home, and now we're paying the consequences. Yeah, it's the bloat, and it's finally rolling around now that they can't sustain themselves, now that they have to trim the fat. Yeah, now they're de-bloating.
Interest rates. It also involves...
Oh, and also with Destiny, with Bungie, they had to merge a bunch of studios together.
Involves development costs, how studios are staffed, consumers' spending habits, and game pricing. The storm is so brutal, he says, because it is all of these things at once, and none have really alleviated since layoffs began. So this journalist here sees what this person is saying, where at no point do they mention anything about like chud gamers, but they're going to make it about chud gamers. Don't you worry about it.
Oh, poggers.
So the next section is for indie developers. Specifically, the threat to their existence has been substantial.
No, it hasn't. There are so many indie developers right now that have thrived. Like Donkey's little studio that he made, or his publishing company, has supported so many indie studios because they're amazing. Wasn't one of them nominated for, what is it called? Like Indie Game of the Year or some shit? Yeah, Animal Well was nominated, or did it win? I can't remember, but like that's really big. First time publisher fucking winning or even being nominated for that kind of thing is so strong. Yeah, Bellatra won that, yeah. Yeah, like what are we talking about? This is so disingenuous. And again, they do have an agenda. They do have a bias. No, the indies are dying. No, they're not. They're doing fine. Yes, studios shut down. It happens. Even if the whole chud versus non-chud narrative didn't exist, indies would still die. Like, sorry, it's just how it works.
Threat to their existence. My God, they're so dramatic. Dozens of small studios shuttered in 2024. Rip Dustborn. Though it's difficult to get a full picture of how many indie studios the industry lost, as there's more likely to shut down quietly without much fanfare, or before many players even know they exist. Okay. With dwindling opportunities to get funding from investors and little cash to go around, developers sought alternative methods to fund their games in the past year. Some took bankrolling into their own hands. Among Us creator Inner Sloth launched an initiative to give fellow developers backing to finish projects. Others, like Tales of Kenzera developer Surgeon Studios, made their public plans in early development in hopes of attracting investments, all while fending off racist attacks from the anti-DEI crowd, making the challenges they're facing twofold.
That game, I remember looking at it, and it looked so insanely unimpressive, and it had, it had just not good reviews. People didn't enjoy the game. Yeah, it came out in April, and it had a bunch of 9 out of 10s, but people still didn't buy it because it looks so mid. Yeah. Look at the... Yeah, okay, now I remember what game this is.
Now, with Tales of Zao, the main reason that game failed, or Tales of Kenzera Zao.
Oh, I remember why it failed, because Metroid likes, or whatever they're called, those platformers, they're not that popular. It was a niche little game. No one cares, man.
Is simply because they were affiliated with Sweet Baby. That's not the only reason they failed. This game really just didn't have any momentum to begin
thank you.
But it was immediately discovered that they were collaborating with the woke consulting firm Sweet Baby. It was a project listed on the website. And right then and there, the game just had no chance. And you can...
Chat, to keep it in mind, Dead by Daylight also worked with Sweet Baby Inc. and is still a fairly popular game. Sweet Baby Inc. being involved in a video game doesn't automatically make people not want to play the game. It might deter some people and be like, oh, that makes sense. Now I understand. Sure. But it doesn't make it automatically a bad game. If it's a bad game, people just don't play it, period. It has no merit to it.
Blame Sweet Baby for that. Don't blame gamers who don't want to see a game connected to that. And honestly, it all worked out the way that many predicted.
The racist
Surgeon Studios doing massive layoffs, and it appears so that they might be shutting down as a result of the failure of this game. Again, a lot of people might have said this wasn't the most woke game, or even woke at all, but the fact it was connected to Sweet Baby was a death mark. And that says a lot about Sweet Baby and really the state of the industry, that people just don't want anything associated with DEI. And that's a fair thing to say, by the way. If you don't like these things, you speak with your wallet. You're allowed to have preferences. If you don't like studios that push DEI, that's your prerogative. Sure. And you should be able to choose games to support or not support based on that. But a lot of these people just don't get it. But continuing on, Even studios owned by tech juggernauts
Concord.
weren't immune to the industry's contraction.
Let's go, Concord!
Microsoft shuttered Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks. Sony shut down Firewalk. The latter's shuttering wasn't wholly surprising. Its big 2024 release, Concord, was largely considered a flop.
Largely? Yeah, I love that they're underplaying this. Again, I can't help but laugh when journalists try to purposefully use words to like underplay or overplay something. Largely considered a flop. Yeah, losing $300 million. Yeah, shutting down an entire studio, making recalls and refunds for a video game. Yeah, largely considered a flop. Yeah, sure. I think an average housefly outlived Concord. I think that was the meme.
Actually considered a flop?
That's crazy work.
It's unanimously considered a flop. Yeah. They literally refunded the $1 million they made on this hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollar budget game, and they even returned that $1 million just to save face because it wasn't worth continuing. That is an abject failure, not considered a flop. But anyways, having a hit didn't stop studios a safety net, didn't give studios any safety net. Near universal acclaim for Tango's Hi-Fi Rush didn't stop Microsoft's axe.
Yes, that's the Corpo's fault. Hi-Fi Rush was a massive success, but they didn't think it was good enough. I always thought that was such a shame. I was meaning to like maybe play it one day, just because everybody talks about how great of a game it is, and they wanted to make a sequel, and they still shut it down. Even though it won awards and it made a lot of money.
Did, though, give Tango just enough juice to be revived by a new buyer. Let's see how revived Hi-Fi Rush is. Up 92 players right now. 92 in-game players. Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's a single-player game.
Great example.
I mean, it's a single-player game. Revived? I don't know. Maybe they just want to play the next game.
In other words, it's been a dismal year for morale. When developers gathered in Los Angeles in June for Summer Gate Fest, developer New Blood Interactive bought out a billboard solely to memorialize their fellow developers who lost their jobs. We love you. We miss you.
By the way.
We hate money. What is going on? Also, how many developer game fests do they have? It's almost like every single month at this point. They love patting themselves on the shoulder for just existing. But anyways, this year may have been the...
I mean, there's a lot of VTuber cons every year. Just saying.
The 10th anniversary of Gamergate.
There's VTuber cons.
The 2014 online hate movement that shaped the internet harassment tactics apparent today. But online, conversations felt like a trip back in time. Conservative ideologues bemoaned the inclusion of characters who did not fit the cookie-cutter image of a white, cis, hetero man. They complained that DEI was being forced upon them. It wasn't. No.
But that's your target demographic. Like, if you want to make money, that's what I don't understand. Why would you open a burger joint and then serve, pizza? People... the existing customers will not want to eat the pizza on the plate. They'll be like, "Hey, where's my freaking burger, man?" Pizza's still tasty, but it might not suit to everyone, and that's why there's people that aren't buying your games. You can't sustain yourself.
It's very obvious that it was. We've seen studios just outright say that they're
so
pushing
weird.
These things. Okay, but on top of that, this idea that people only wanted cookie-cutter images of white, cis, hetero men in games. How did games like Stellar Blade do so well with a Asian female protagonist? What is going on?
It's because she's being objectified, and that's why men, they love to look at her ass and beat off. That's why it's bad.
People just want good games. They will gladly accept a minority or a woman in a position of a protagonist if it's actually a good game. That's the...
No, because then those people will cry and say that it's bad to have an attractive woman in the video game. Because she's attractive. Because she's physically fit.
problem. It's a shield for criticism. They put a minority as a lead in a game, and they have a low-quality game. People don't want to play the game because it's just not appealing. Then they blame it on the racists who never gave it a chance in the first place because of the choice of protagonists. It's just a bunch of excuses. But continuing on, in March, harassment towards a small consultancy company called Sweet Baby Inc. reached new heights as bad actors, organized through Discords, Steam forums, and other online spaces, branding themselves as Gamergate 2.0. Dude, they branded themselves as Gamergate 2.0. You branded gamers as that title to make yourselves the perpetual victims. But they continue on. Online mobs harass developers using tweets, DMs, YouTube videos, and Twitch streams.
But you... did we forget that you called harassment against the person that made the Steam group and told him to report his account and report the group itself, and it failed and backfired, and Valve said, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to ban them for having an opinion and making a list? Like, at least tell a half-truth or something. I don't know, man.
Anyone with any connection to Sweet Baby and any consultancies, a fairly wide net, as consultants are often brought on to advise on accuracy, sensitivity, and more. Their mission was fighting against wokeification. The realities of the economic issues impacting games they love had no...
As consultants are often brought on to advise on accuracy, sensitivity, and more. Okay, I'm pretty sure what happened in Assassin's Creed Shadows was not accuracy, and they didn't even get the buildings correct for the accuracy of the time period. Do we forget that entire, like, thing where they had to delay the game because they quite literally fucked up Japanese culture? Yeah, they're getting paid a lot of money to do absolutely nothing. That's kind of crazy.
Place in their tactics, the specter of diversity had more pull than analysts and experts. Okay, so basically you're saying the market spoke by what you just said there. But let's go back, okay? Let's just reflect for one moment. Sweet Baby Inc., a woke consultancy firm that has caused ripples across the industry. It is at a point where they basically have to hide everything they're doing. They've been driven even further underground. And once again, we have an article that ignores the reason all of this started. This is the reason the entire backlash against Sweet Baby Inc. reached a fever.
And they fired this guy, by the way.
Pitch back in February. Their employee, Chris Kindred, told everyone in his following to falsely report, Steam Group Sweet Baby Inc. detected, and the personal account of Cabrutus Rambo, who was the one who created the Sweet Baby Inc. detected Steam Group. That is what started a firestorm. That's what ignited all the criticism against Sweet Baby. Again, a journalist who clearly is not very good at their job or incredibly biased leaves out this incredibly important detail because it doesn't suit their narrative.
The narrative, yeah.
Continuing on. Games with black leads and characters were derided as forced. Female characters deemed unattractive.
Nobody said this. Nobody said this, man. I do not give a fuck about the whatever her name is. Freaking, I already forgot because it's just such a fucking like whatever game. What was her freaking name? The non-binary freaking fantasy chick. God, chat, help me, help. Tosh, thank you. God damn, dude. Tosh looks like the fantasy friggin' Vosh? No, it's Tosh, isn't it? Yeah, it was Tosh. She looks like one of the Draenei from World of Warcraft, I guess like buffified. And it does not matter. It's the character itself that's unlikable. Her growling in people's ears when she's trying to have sex with them is insanely fucking cringe. Like, nobody cares about the whole, the attractiveness. No, the attractiveness is from the outside, by the way. I never once made a comment on her appearance saying she was ugly. I think it just looked like she didn't look like the older character, the older race. When the game came out before this one, people compared the races between each other of the same people, and it looked worse than the previous game. it didn't look alike. And maybe that's what they're talking about. But overall, the Quinari, yes, the Quinari, that race in the previous game looked very different from what it does now. And for some godforsaken reason, they also made her personality absolutely god-awful. Yeah, and she sounds cringe. Or they, or he, or she, I don't fucking know. It's so bad.
Attractive or masculine were suffering from DEI chin. I had to look this one up. I've never actually...
I never saw people saying that. They just said she doesn't look very nice.
Heard of DEI chin?
Yeah, I need to pull a bar.
But apparently this is a thing that was created this year. DEI chin is an expression that has been used to refer to perceived trend in female characters in video games and animations that have strong, defined jawline associated by some with...
But they didn't say DEI chins. They just pointed out a physical characteristic. Holy moly chins has the ultimate chin on all of entertainment. That's not even what they said.
Woke culture, DEI, and modern trends in video game development. So I had not heard of the phrase DEI chin, but thanks to this journalist, I will be including this in future videos because it's an absolute banger. So thanks to The Wired for informing me on a very great tool here. But continuing on, Dragon Age the Veilguard was criticized by far-right trolls for its customization options, which allow players to create characters with top surgery scars or play with non-binary companion. After reviews were released, conspiracists latched onto cliched phrases and other language as proof that Studio BioWare was instructing reviewers how to talk about their game. Well, they definitely did some of that too, it's been proven. But they make this claim that because...
Yeah, when you see reviews being written and they sound almost identical and they use literally the same words over and over. What was it? Come back to form? Yeah, return to form. They used that phrase over and over. They didn't even use variations. Yeah, I don't know, man. Kind of, it seems like there's a pattern or something. Last time I checked, animals like monkeys and humans are pretty good at pattern recognition. If you train them enough and they see a pattern, they will notice it.
These character creation options that these alt-right, far-right gamers would just never give it a chance. Well, what about Baldur's Gate 3? Having pretty much the same. The difference between Baldur's Gate 3 and Veilguard is that
they don't have top surgery scars in Baldur's Gate 3 because it doesn't make any fucking sense. They have characters that are presenting as female with penises. You can have a dick if you have boobs as a girl. Nobody batted an eye at that except some fucking people that care way too much. They don't even have dialogue that alludes to you being trans in that video game. It was just like, if you can fuck it, if it can move, you can fuck it kind of deal, right? Because it's magical. It's a magical game. If you had, like, by logic, if you are trans in Baldur's Gate 3, in a fantasy world, you wouldn't get surgery. You would either drink a potion or you'd magically turn into a woman or a man. It's just that simple. The logic is sound.
The woke features ended at character creation as opposed to Veilguard, where that was the whole game. It wasn't just a few little things here. The entire storyline was driven by woke nonsense, by characters coming out as non-binary, pulling a bar, doing push-ups and misgendering one another. And
it's not even... So... The funniest part about Baldur's Gate 3 is that you can just not engage with dialogue, or, like, you can kill off a character so you can never look at them ever again in the game. You can tell them to fuck off, like, permanently. They don't sit at your camp. Like, you can permanently tell them to fuck off, right? And then you don't have to engage with their storyline. Period. Like, ever. If you don't like, for example, if you're a kind of person who's like, I can't stand, what's his name? Gale. And you're like, oh, I don't like that flamboyant son of a bitch. You can literally kill him or tell him to fuck off. And the entire storyline with no spoilers, but like his entire storyline becomes irrelevant. It's just non-existent. But here, they do make you engage with those stories. They They do. They make you do it.
So much ridiculous stuff. It was caked into every aspect of the game. But next they say, even not released titles face bombardment. Compulsion games south of midnight. I don't have to read anymore.
What?
They're affiliated with Sweet Baby. They're a Sweet Baby customer or client. That's it. That is why people are critical of that game. And there's very bad designs. There's a photoshopped example here, but you don't need the photoshopped example. The real examples are not good. But continuing on, with pressure to remain apolitical, a curious agenda for an entertainment form that marries.
There are games that have political agendas. Metal Gear Solid is literally a parody of politics, but like a soft parody. There's Command and Conquer. There's so many other games that I can't name off the top of my head because I didn't fucking pre-watch this video, but like there are so many games that have underlying themes that allude to real world problems or like politics. It's well written that you don't notice it because you're playing a freaking video game.
The artistic preferences of narrative and imaginary worlds with agency granted to players who inhabit them. Dude, get over yourself. My God. Did not come just from a vocal minority. Following the release of Black Myth Wukong, some streamers were given instructions to avoid talking about COVID-19 or feminist propaganda.
Yes, that did happen, absolutely, and I think that's cringe. If you want to push back on that, that's your prerogative. There were streamers that took Black Myth Wukong and made fun of the fact that they got told not to talk about it or whatever. Yeah. But that's also their prerogative to give instructions. It's their video game. If they get mad at you and never give you a key again, that's your own fault.
And the guidelines had the opposite effect, encouraging streamers to lead with the code words they've been barred from, a push against standards meant to actually censor players. That didn't happen. Where did that happen?
No, it happened. It did. I do remember that. It's just that they don't censor you. I think this is completely incorrect. Saying that they censored players is incorrect. You could either A, refuse to play the game, or B, refuse to not talk about whatever their instructions were, because they did give them a PDF. I remember looking at it. If you wanted to stream it, you were allowed to. It's just that they wouldn't give you a key, or they would completely dissociate from you because they saw what you said. It's not that deep, man.
I don't see any source for this pushback that people did, apparently against this right here, this notice given to reviewers. That was very simple, okay? Review Black Myth Wukong and don't include a bunch of political nonsense. That's a...
Yeah, political nonsense, offensive language, or humor, insult other influences of players, do not discuss content related to China's game industry policy. That's fine, but that's their game. They didn't put a gun to your head and shut down your stream for speaking out against it. That's why I thought it was so funny when people, like, streamed the game and just basically said, fuck China, fuck this, fuck that, and I'm like, well, I mean, you can do that. They're just not going to contact you ever again if you ever ask for, like, a game key involving that studio or whatever. Like, that's their prerogative. I don't think that that's that bad. People are blowing it out of proportion. And again, it was a nothing burger.
Very fair request from Game Science. Okay? And just because, you know, these people, like this journalist, are so obsessed with themselves, they think everything is political. Well, you know what? You can review Black Myth Wukong without talking about feminist propaganda. Like,
or you can, and then they blacklist you. Again, Western game studios do that as well.
You kidding me? There's a reason they mention that stuff. It has no place. It doesn't even make sense. It's just annoying, and it detracts from giving an honest review of the game.
That is true, though. With Black Myth Wukong, it's a game about a monkey and Chinese mythology. I understand why they give them instructions. Some people need instructions. They're stupid. But I mean, they just blacklist them. It's not censorship.
But anyways, looking ahead to...
Oh, chat window! Oh, Jesus! I'm so sorry! I'm so sorry! Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. Oops, I forgot to hide it.
2025, Ball says he hears more pessimism generally. But it just sucks to contemplate, let alone predict. If there is one plus, he says, it's that there is a lot more hiring happening than is generally believed. Downside is it's not nearly compensating overall, especially at indies.
Yeah, because indies probably don't have as much money as big studios.
As 2024 comes to a close, the industry is operating from the outside with a business-as-usual mindset. In December, developers gathered in Los Angeles to celebrate the Game Awards. On stage, host Geoff Keighley made a small speech amid game announcements, accolades, and a performance from Snoop Dogg. The sad reality is that over the past few years, the gaming industry has suffered significant and unprecedented industry-wide layoffs, Keighley said. Those affected by those affect the games we get to play, and even more important, the people who make the games we love. We can debate on certainly disagree with the reasons why. And honestly, as a show of, we kind of struggle with how to address these topics in a constructive way. I'm sorry, my brain.
We have addressed it in a constructive way. There's a bloat in the video game industry. You got paid $120,000 a month to live in California to produce a game that nobody will buy, an overpriced game that nobody will buy because they didn't have money in the economy, in the state of the economy that we're in. And now you're paying the price like 4 years later. I don't think it's that deep. Sorry. These people act like the people that buy their games don't have to experience the same kind of plight that we do. That's what's mind-blowing to me. Like, why do you think corpos lay off people in, say, the hospital industry or the office? I don't fucking know. Like in an office where people get laid off. They do that all the time because they need to make the investors happy because they're not making money. That's what happens. They don't live in the real world. They just cope and think like they're living in this fantasy world where people buy their games and everything's going to be butterflies and rainbows and they have infinite amount of money to keep making games. It's like, no, that's kind of what happens. Yeah, even people at hospitals get laid off, even if they're doing a good job. I've heard that so many times.
My brain's literally rotting from reading this article, but we're almost through it, okay? There's one more section that's important. Kaylee used this segment to introduce the Game Awards' first Game Changer Award, a nod to an individual who had positively impacted the industry. Then the show continued with headline-dominating announcements about major projects like The Witcher 4 and the next title from Last of Us developer Naughty Dog.
Oh, well, boy.
That's great. So this whole Game Changer Award was a massive controversy. So this is the individual right here who was presenting himself as this humble, small member of the industry.
I've heard about this. Chat, you're gonna laugh so much.
Right, just this humble guy. Turns out he is a major executive at Tencent and responsible for acquisitions of other IPs. AKA, this is the guy that ends up getting thousands and thousands of people in the industry laid off. So
yes, little bro, Game Changer Award. I pat myself on the back. If this is not the epitome of patting yourself on the back, I don't know what is. That's why I hated it when people are like, oh my god, what do you think of the Gamer Awards? And I'm like, it's literally the Oscars, but for video games. No one fucking cares. No one cares. He nominated himself. He's like this humble gamer. He's got the shirt, that Kirby and like fucking Zelda shirt, Zelda jacket. Like, what are we doing? He's presenting himself like he's not some exec that makes millions of dollars a year.
This journalist is complaining about layoffs the whole time while praising the guy who's responsible for thousands of those examples. Yeah. That's how tone deaf or willingly ignorant these people are to what's going on around them. And also we have games to look forward to. Oh, like Intergalactic that everyone's absolutely crapping on. Even Witcher 4, which actually has a chance of being a pretty good game. Even that's getting a lot of flack because of things going on behind the scenes, the words of their developers and people on their team that are attacking gamers, attacking the lore of the Witcher saga. It's a big mess.
And can I just say that the actual trailer for this video game had more ads than the average Hollywood movie in like the same amount of minutes. Like 4 minutes, they had like a Porsche ad placement. I forget what the other one was, like a shoe placement as well. Like, what?
Yes, even games that really are just a ball on a tee are getting messed with because people in the studios, they can't shut their mouth. But let's conclude this. Amid all of this is the specter of AI. There's still little insight on how much AI will continue to grow and how future games might use it, but it's a rising concern as rank and file workers are laid off. No one knows when or if the industry will bounce back with sustainable jobs and compensation. Yes, there will be games to play. It's harder to say how many people will be able to make them.
Well, logically, if a big corpo borpo that gives themselves the award for, what is it called? Game Changer of the Year award? I don't know. I think they're probably going to replace you with the AI pretty soon because that'll make them more money because they don't have to pay the AI. They would love the idea of just replacing you. They would love it.
Well, maybe trimming the fat's a good thing, and maybe people actually start to reflect on what 2024 was. It was a rejection of low-quality slop. It was a rejection of virtue signaling, and it's trying to push the industry towards what gamers actually want. Fun and appealing games. That's it. That's the formula. It's really complicated, I know, but people in the industry who really know what they're doing, they understand this, and that's why they're still succeeding while everyone around them is flopping. But that's going to do it for this video. Again, Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time.
I mean, again, nothing's going to change unless the video game industry, just like every other industry, like food and medical, stops putting profit above everything else. It's not going to change. The only reason that there's a pivot right now is because this last year or two was a complete flop and people didn't buy as many games and they lost a whole bunch of money. Sony did notice. They are going to do something. I bet. After losing $200 million? Yeah, something's gonna happen at Sony. They're gonna probably release and pivot to something completely the opposite of what Concord is. At least I think so, but I could be wrong. Anyway, check out the video. More like 500 million? I thought it was 250, but again, there's so many numbers floating around. I have no idea. Firewalk Studio got shut down after being around for like 10 years. Poopy Soft has completely shit the bed. The bubble has been burst, I think, or at least partially. Whether or not we'll see anything is, you know, doubtful, but